Hi, everyone. I recently hosted a parent talk, and during that parent talk, I spoke about chronic tech distraction and the impact it's having on family life. Well, then I had a very enthusiastic audience member that actually added to the discussion by saying that this chronic tech distraction that we're feeling currently from our devices is only going to get worse in the future with the rise of AI. Ajit Gopalakrishnan, welcome to Screen Smart.
Thank you.
So nice to have you here.
Great. It's great to be here. Thanks very much for inviting me.
Yes, it's so exciting. So we went for coffee a week ago.
Yeah.
And after having coffee with Ajit for 1 hour, I had to sit and just process what he had said. It took me sort of half an hour to decompress after the conversation because you're so knowledgeable and so passionate, and you just have so much to add to this digital well-being conversation. How did you get into digital well-being and cyber education?
Yeah, so I'm an engineer, and I haven't really ever been in tech directly, or I hadn't been before. And a few years ago, I was in a corporate, I was in manufacturing, and we had that situation in 2016 where textbooks weren't reaching kids in public schools. And I just felt like I wanted to make a difference in that space. And so I left the corporate world and basically set out to do a tech solution for underprivileged schools in our country. So that's what I do now. I'm part of Gendermark, and we basically deploy tech into underprivileged schools with the help of private companies that want to sponsor those schools. So in doing that and developing a product for schools, obviously kids are vulnerable to digital tech. And part of kind of designing the product, I had to really understand the impact of this tech, how it's designed, what are the risks associated. Obviously, kids are vulnerable, and if we're a company that's deploying tech into schools, we've got to understand the space.
You've got that responsibility.
Yeah, and that's how I got into it. And in the last few years, have really developed a passion for technology, but making sure that technology is used for the benefit of kids. So yeah. And yeah, sorry for disrupting or being passionate in your meeting, because
it was amazing.
Because it's obviously a topic that I'm very close to.
No, it was actually so amazing to have a strong voice join mine in that space, because oftentimes I feel like I'm so alone in this space, and it was just so nice to have backing and the knowledge as well.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of people are either oblivious or aware, but don't know what to do about it.
Yes, I think parents are very scared of the fourth industrial revolution.
Yeah.
So tell me, where do you actually see AI going in this time space in the next 5 years? What can we expect to see?
Only that we don't know. Yeah. so I do actually some talks on this where I think what we have to get used to change. The fact that, especially the more recent developments, I'd say in the last couple of years in terms of AI, is fascinating and scary and daunting and disruptive. And I think everyone agrees, doesn't matter which side of the line, doom or very positive you are, that change is coming in a big way, that, the way we understand society. If you think of the change that social media made on our social lives, this is kind of what's going to happen again, sort of scaled up, and it sort of impact not just our social lives, but our productive lives, kind of every aspect of our lives. So if you ask me how's it going to look, I have no idea. And I don't think anyone does, if they're honest. I think what we've got to be prepared for is a world that's going to be changing quite a lot. And we've got to change our mindset.
And tell me, what impact do you think this fourth industrial revolution is going to have on children?
Yeah, so strangely enough, I think children are the most prepared for it. Because if you think about yourself as a 5-year-old, you're comfortable with not knowing what's happening, not knowing what's around you, and you're malleable and you're keen to explore. I use the example that children often put everything in their mouth. It's not because they're perpetually hungry, because they're excited to know how that tastes.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So their taste is a way of exploring.
Yes.
So they're keen and ready to explore the world. I think as adults, we become so set in our ways and we become comfortable with the frameworks that we've built around us that any disruption to that is really uncomfortable.
Yes.
I mean, I just moved down to PE and the kids adapted quickest.
So quickly.
Yeah, and it's not that's not a unique story. That's kind of the general story. Yes. So if anything, I think the children are the most prepared to be faced with this kind of changing world.
Yes.
What we've got to do, and the role that I think that we've got to do, is we've got to keep them safe in that, and we've got to keep ourselves grounded.
Yes.
But also be really okay with change. We've got to change our mindset of saying what we know is not necessarily what we know anymore, and it's going to change.
Absolutely. And tell me, so I often get asked about whether it's safe to post photos and videos of your kids online. Considering where AI is headed, what is your take on sharing?
Yeah, look, I'm not a fan of sharing in general. Like, I think there's a lot of risks, and this is before AI. This is just social media, and social media, in a big way, is incredibly harmful. As you know, I believe that kids shouldn't be on social media before the age of 16. I think they shouldn't have phones before the age of 16. So I'm quite clear. And by the way, just if you want to understand that, none of the big tech companies' kids are on social media before the age of 16.
Steve Jobs invented the iPad, and his children never had iPads.
So that's an important tell. And anyway, so in terms of sharing online, I think there's a couple of things. So one, the kind of deepfake technology that's out there with the changes in AI means your face can be on anything. Yes. It's not the same as cutting and pasting. It's AI using your features. I don't know if you know right now, there's a whole bunch of Hollywood actors that are on strike, as well as writers, because of the disruption that's coming to that industry. And basically, movie companies don't need you for the sequel. Yes. So just think about what that means. That means that they can, just by having the video of the original, they can do sequel after sequel with a automatically or AI generated script and an AI generated movie. So if that's what's possible with just one movie shoot of an individual, can you imagine what they could do with photos online? So, look, I think the horse is bolted. I think most of us have shared pictures, or innocently so, and I don't think you can go back and worry about that a lot. You just got to accept that your images are going to be used in a way. And I mentioned this to you the other day. I don't think it's going to be as dramatic, because people are not going to believe anything anymore in terms of what's not verified sort of personally, or there's another way of verification. So in a way, if there's photos of you online doing anything, nobody's going to believe it. Nobody's going to believe any versions of that anyway. So,
yes, and what does that do? Is that why people are starting to copyright their voices and starting to copyright their faces? I mean, some of the Hollywood celebrities are starting to copyright their children's faces from very young.
Yeah, again, I think that's a bit naive. So the example I use is, if I ask you to draw a picture of a dolphin.
Yes.
Okay, I think we chatted about this. You're going to draw a picture of a dolphin. Now, that's going to be inspired by pictures you've seen, movies you've watched. If you've ever been near a dolphin, you're going to remember all those pictures, and then you're going to draw an original SD picture of a dolphin. That's exactly how AI works. So AI doesn't cut and paste. It learns from thousands of images out there, and then creates its own image.
Okay.
So a AI generated drawing of anything is an original.
Yeah. So
where does copyright
fit? Where's the line
in this space? Because it's not cut and paste. Yes. People understand cut and paste. They don't understand generative AI. And generative AI is inspired. So if I look at you and I'm inspired and then I draw a picture of a lady, that's not you.
Yes.
You can't copyright that picture.
No.
So just think about how, like I say, the whole world is going to be disrupted. Our frameworks are going to be disrupted quite a lot. Absolutely. Because our current systems and institutions aren't designed for what's coming.
And Ajit, you're quite, you're very vocal about being against social media for children.
Yeah.
And could you maybe give people watching an idea of why that is? Why do you feel passionate about waiting till 16 for social media?
Yeah, because I think that's quite easy. Like I always quote a line by Sir Ken Robinson, who I follow. Is a gentleman in the education space who passed on, but he said a lot of great things. And one of his favorite lines was, there's nothing social about social media.
Sure.
In fact, I call it anti-social media, because what it does is it trains you out of being social, not into being social.
Yes.
Yeah. And the problem is a lot of our children up till the age of 16 are developing their social identity. They're learning how to interact with each other. They're learning how to be authentic. Yes. They're learning how to cope with social environments. And what you do by introducing them to social media is you remove their social training.
Yes.
So it's weird. I mean, if you think about it, when we were in COVID, everyone was worried about the social development of children.
Sure.
Right? Yet we give them access to social media.
Yes.
And then you have situations where kids sit together all on their phones.
Yes.
It's completely antisocial.
So often.
Yeah, it's completely antisocial. So I think social development is incredibly important for children.
Absolutely.
And if you expose them to anti-social media, you skip that development of theirs.
So I love this term anti-social media. So one of the things that you speak of is the fact that so many of the terms or terminology in the big tech sphere is designed to brainwash us a little bit.
Correct.
So social media is one of them.
Yeah, dumb phone, smartphone. So I don't call them dumb phones, I call them smarter phones.
Yes.
So why a smartphone? So, and then things like when should I give my child access to technology is wrong, because it's actually when should I give technology access to my child? Because that's exactly what these phones are actually doing, is they're accessing your child.
Yes.
And they're addicting your child. So when is the right time? When is your child ready to be in front of an addictive substance?
Yes.
We do this with alcohol, with tobacco, with driving. There are minimum ages for all of this.
Yes.
And I don't think you can live in today's world without actually using this technology. But you need to develop. You need to have a moral guidance, a framework. And children are the most vulnerable. So, I don't see one reason to give children access to social media prior to age 16. I don't understand it. Like, why would you give them access to, as I say, anti-social media? And these manipulation terms are not by mistake.
Let's dig into that. Yeah, let's dig into that, because you actually say to me that your phone is like the hip flask.
Yes.
It's carrying the alcohol with you.
Yeah.
It's and for me that was an eye opener, because the mobility of screens is a big problem with toddlers, with the device that goes into the car. The iPad is in the car, and now the mom's not having the conversation with the toddler, and the toddler is not developing the vocabulary because the screen is mobile. So tell me, let's dig into the manipulation of these apps.
So a big change happened when we went from laptops or even desktops or even laptops to the mobile phone.
Yes.
What happened, and again, this was the shift from me accessing technology to technology accessing me.
Yes.
And the mobile phone then meant that, and the multifunctionality of it meant that you are always online.
Yes.
Yeah. I kind of be controversial. I say, your phone is closer to you than your underwear. because you take your phone to the toilet.
Yes, it's true.
Do you know what I mean? And you keep it on you more than anything else.
Yes.
Adults engage anywhere between 2 to 3 hours a day on their phone. Children, it's more.
Yes.
So children, it's probably 6 to 7 hours a day. Now, if you think about that, and that's because it's with you all the time. Yeah. And what that does for the tech companies is gives them as much information as practically possible.
Yes.
To then manipulate you, therefore. And look, I'm not against tech companies. I know that they focus on what works because they're in the attention economy. I'm sure you know about it. And their aim is to get people to stay on the phone.
Yes, and
so it's as simple as that. Yeah.
If something's free, if you're using WhatsApp for free, then you're the product,
correct,
right?
Yeah. If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. This is a common line. And what I find is people are kind of loosely aware of all of this, but they haven't really sat down and internalized what does that actually mean. Like ask the question, what benefit does my child get if they're on social media or they have a mobile phone that's not a smartphone? It's not the one that I can use to call them. It's everything else and technology accessing them. So yeah, like I say, I'm amazed at how we've kind of built these or been manipulated into building these things in our mind around how important these phones are and how much we need them, when actually it's just an addiction.
Yes, okay. So the other term that I wonder about is online gaming.
Yeah.
So because it's called a game, I think many parents see it as just being a game.
Yeah.
And I recently listened to a podcast in which the writer of the book Play was actually speaking, and he, in this book Play, he explains the components of a game.
Yeah.
And he says that as soon as someone gets hurt in a game, the game stops. So in soccer, if someone gets hurt, the game stops. And so
real life.
So he actually says that he doesn't believe that online gaming should be called a game at all, because it's not actually the aim of the game is so many times to actually cause harm or to hurt other people. And so how can that be a game? What is your take on that? Yeah,
it's bizarre what we've come to be okay with. Yeah.
Yes.
Grand Theft Auto, which is, it's bizarre to me that we have a game and that we allow kids to play it. And yeah, they've got age restrictions, but honestly, most people have access, most kids have access to these kinds of things. And I came across one of the kids playing it, and one of the goals is, if you're running to get in your car, or you're running through, and there's a cop standing on the side doing nothing, just standing there.
Yes.
If you go and beat him up, you get points. Like, you're rewarded for a complete act of violence.
Yes.
Yeah. And these, I can't even begin to think the psychology of a child who's rewarded with a dopamine hit for beating up a cop.
A cop, yeah.
And this is okay. This is okay to do at scale.
Yes.
So gaming, look, I don't have a lot of experience in gaming, so I don't want to kind of comment. But for one thing, I know that, again, the whole point of the game is to keep you there.
Yes, for as long as possible.
For as long as possible, and use as much information as they have.
Yes.
To make you stay.
Yes.
So why would you expose anybody who's not ready for that kind of...
Yes, who doesn't have the brain architecture to resist that. I mean, as adults, we battle with resistance. We battle with the self-discipline to put the phone away when we go for a coffee date. So how do we expect our children to be able to regulate themselves, their time, when you're actually pinning them up against the best product developers in the world? Correct.
And it's marketing, right? So that's why it's called a game.
Yes, you're
Simple.
Right. Oh. So I think in my job, I see a lot of children that battle to disconnect, but I also see a lot of parents that battle to disconnect. What do you think the answer is to this chronic tech distraction that we face? What do we do in our homes to improve this?
Yeah, there's a lot you can do. Actually, that's kind of, I think, one of the things that people miss is that it's not this, either or element.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you speak about it, zone control, where there's a physical cue that I can, if you only allow phones in your lounge, for example,
Yes.
at least that brings into play everyone who's at home to know that you're on the phone. So if you sit all day on the phone, somebody in your social environment will stop you from doing. So there's the zone control.
Yes.
There's simple things like switching off your notifications.
Yes.
ADHD is a huge problem with kids, but distraction in general is a huge problem in society now.
Yes.
People can't concentrate for lengths of time anymore, and that's deteriorating the social fabric, essentially.
Yes, so sad.
The quality of our engagements. You're talking to your friend. Your friend's not going to engage with you for more unless you keep them super entertained.
Yes.
They're gonna drift, and that's just because we spend 3 hours a day getting distracted. You know, so switching off your notifications. Buying an alarm clock.
Yes, yes.
So that you don't charge your phone next to your bed. It's as simple as, those are simple things you can do just to regain control and prevent this ubiquitous access to you.
Yes.
Like the phone has access to you more than your underwear. I say that because it hopefully people will remember that. Like you've got to remove that.
Yes.
And as pervasive as it is in your life, that's how much harm it's going to cause.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about appearance culture. So I know this is something that you're also very passionate about.
Yeah.
So obviously, teenagers have a global peer group, and they're giving them constant feedback on what they look like and what they're doing and who they are in a pivotal time when identity is being formulated. What do you think the impact of this will be on the mental health of young people going forwards?
Yeah, so we've run the social experiment. Everyone is driven by likes, and I often say this in some of the talks that I do is that the like is not a benign symbol.
Yes.
It's actually quite dangerous. And when I say we've run the social experiment, I say this, long before digital. There was another part of society that was completely driven by likes.
Yes.
Can you tell me which that is? Any guesses? What other part of society is consistently driven by likes? Okay, let me give you a clue. Likes is another word for likes is votes.
Oh, do you mean politically?
Yeah. So do we like politicians?
No. Well,
do we trust them?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, no, but most people...
Do we trust them?
No, I don't think so.
Do we think that they're truthful?
Probably not.
Okay. So, and notice I said politicians. I didn't say politicians of a particular country.
Yes. No, right? In general.
So we know what happens when you are driven by likes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
In general, across the world.
Yeah.
If you're constantly driven by likes, you start to portray a fake you.
Yes.
You start to do everything you can for the likes. You start to become superficial.
Yes.
So now, if you think about it, our children on a daily basis
are driven by
are
likes.
being trained to be politicians because they post 4 or 5 times a day, and when they post, like me, if I post, I sit there and I look for how many likes I'm getting and who's commented, and I'm all driven by the superficial
and that dopamine
feedback.
hit.
Correct. So we are training not only kids, young vulnerable kids, but we're training society to act like politicians. And that tells you, and we do this 3 hours a day.
Sure.
So now you start to see kind of some of the stuff that's happening in the world starts to make sense because we've now had 10 years of this. Right? So 10 years being driven by likes, people are more fake, superficial, they put a mask on outside. This is why your social life on social media is 20 million times better than your actual life.
Yes.
And this is why you're so focused about your appearance versus your authentic self.
Yes.
So I talk about it a lot, the impact of social media and the like. This symbol is an incredibly
powerful.
It's a malicious symbol.
Yes.
And like I say, we know how this turns out. We've run the social experiment before.
Sure.
And yet this time we're exposing all of our children and ourselves to this.
And it's interesting because, I read a recent study on mental health in 18 to 24-year-olds, and they actually measured how the younger you have a smartphone, how it impacts on mental health. So very revealing study. They did it on 27,000 people worldwide, 65 countries. So it transcends socioeconomic factors and childhood trauma and all of that. And one of the factors, so mental health in general just declined so much for the younger a child had a smartphone. But the one area that showed a lot of decline was detachment from reality. So the younger a child has a smartphone, the more detached they feel from reality in young adulthood.
Yeah.
Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, when we meet, we engage on so many more things than your screen and what you're saying, right?
Yes.
Like human interaction or social interaction is on so many levels. Like you body, your body language, your tone, I get a lot. I often say this, if somebody says to me, I'm fine, but they're not, I'll know.
Yes, you can. Because there's so many cues.
I've developed the cues in order to be able to do that. Children are no longer developing this. So their understanding of reality then gets warped.
Yes.
Right? Because my reality is built around what I'm engaging with 3 or 4 hours a day. I'm no longer playing outside. I'm no longer meeting people. I'm not actually seeing and engaging with people. I'm not learning humans.
Yeah, so you are actually detached from reality.
You're detached. Yeah. Of course you're detached. And I it's not a surprise. Like none of this is you know what, that's what I'm saying. When I talk to people, everyone agrees.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And yet we still give our children
these devices.
Why?
Sure. And tell me, I feel like this is going to be exacerbated by the metaverse, where it's sort of, where social media and online gaming meets, where is that detachment of reality going to land in that space?
Yeah. I'm really disappointed with Apple, because Apple's brand used to be very much around, Facebook has always had a bit of a tarnished brand, but Apple has always been quite protective.
Yes.
But they've also moved into this virtual reality space. And I tell you why I'm disappointed. Because what changed in a big way was we started doing social experiments at scale.
Yes.
Right? So if I was introducing a new drug, how would we do it? We would do it in a controlled environment.
Sure.
We would test it. It would be safe. We would understand the impact in a controlled environment. And then only once this is called, FDA.
Yes.
There's a whole approval process before it's released at scale.
Sure.
So what we're doing now is we're combining the addictiveness of social media and gaming into one, and we're about to release it at scale with no controlled tests of what does that mean.
Zero longitudinal study. Zero.
So we do this now. So somehow, at some point, it became okay to test in the general public.
Sure.
The equivalent would be, imagine we were releasing vaccines for the coronavirus on scale in the water.
And no one.
And then we see if it works.
Yes.
And see what happens. Digitally, that's what we're doing.
And
there is no control around any product that you release. That's why I say, the whole privacy and protection, that's applying archaic laws to godlike tech. You're completely missing the point.
And do you think that legislation will ever catch up?
No, I think, and I think I mentioned this, it took 50 years for tobacco legislation to kick in once they started to understand the harm at scale.
Yes, at one point doctors were recommending smoking.
Correct, yeah. The problem is, at that time, the good thing is tobacco never changed.
Yeah, it wasn't
For 50
evolving.
years, it was the same animal. The problem here is that you're behind. Your process takes 50 years to catch up. And the tech is moving at a rate that... So not only are we behind now, but it's accelerating away. So when is I think systematically, we've got to rethink what legislation in this space actually means.
Yes.
everyone was celebrating Facebook getting fined. Actually, Meta getting fined $1.2 billion. Okay, it's the largest fine ever made for sharing of personal information. It was kind of a case, kind of landmark case in Europe against, GDPR is kind of a progressive privacy protection, framework that the Europeans have launched. It took 10 years. It took 10 years to land.
Yes.
And it was $1.2 billion. And Meta's profit last year was $91 billion.
So it didn't even touch sides.
Really? And that's on privacy protection. That's dealing with nothing in terms of the mental health impact, the depression, the superficial, politician. None of those issues are being tackled. This is just the core privacy of my personal information, which is supposed to be landmark. So you see how far behind tech is. That's why actually the control is at a human level, at an individual level, at a community level, where you've got to start protecting your own children and protecting yourself. And it's not really, I'm not a doom and gloom person. I think we need to be a little bit real about this stuff.
A little bit more aware, but a little bit more educated ourselves as to what is this thing that we're giving our kids. And I think so many parents believe that they need to stay ahead of the curve, and that children have to be tech savvy. And I believe that too. I mean, I think we do need to give our children, the opportunity to code and the opportunity to learn robotics. And I always laugh that our kids are still learning cursive at school because I think it's so archaic and probably not that useful anymore. But what would you say? So many parents will say to you, oh, but the reason why my child has a smartphone at the age of 7 is because we want her to be tech savvy. We want her to go into the 4th industrial revolution with the knowledge to be able to get a job one day and so on.
Yeah. So I think there's 2 things I'd like to say that. So one, absolutely, children should have access to technology.
Sure.
Okay? There's no doubt about it. But you can do that. Put a laptop in your lounge.
Sure.
Have the family login as the login. Okay. Nothing else. Kids must access it. Get the latest generative AI tools. Get Microsoft Copilot or get, ChatGPT.
Yes.
Subscribe as a family. Have it and give your children access. I actually think children need to have access to. It's the same thing in schools. I have no problem with schools accessing it, but then it becomes a very different environment. It's not the technology accessing your child. It's your child accessing the environment.
Yes.
The mobile phone is the one that flipped that completely. And obviously, if you're gaming, that's a completely different animal. But the mobile phone flipped that. So for me, that's key, that the children should get access to technology. And then the other thing you got to understand is technology is evolving at a pace. So whatever you're giving your children access to today is going to be obsolete literally in 2 years. So for me, that's reassuring, because if your child has missed out for any period, don't worry. They haven't missed anything except
because
the learning.
Because it will be completely different.
Correct. Except the learning of how to be learning.
Yes.
And children have that anyway, like I said. They used to. It's like, any tech device. Put it in the hand of a child. Leave it for a while. The child will figure it out better than you. Any child will figure it out better than you. Why? Because they're comfortable with not
exploring
knowing.
Exploring, making mistakes.
And they don't worry about breaking it. They don't, so because technology is going to change, whatever they're going to be exposed to in the future is going to be different to what they're currently being exposed to. The only thing they need is to retain that sort of child exploratory, innocence.
Yes, absolutely. And you've got 2 boys.
Yeah.
And what do you do at home? What is your policies at home regarding devices?
Yeah, so I have a kind of an office setup at home, and my children can access that. They're 8 and 13.
Sure.
But it's my login. Sure. And I can, and I'd like to expose them as much as possible. And then my son has a smartphone, my oldest son.
Okay, which is actually, in today's terms, a dumb phone, a Nokia 32.
Yeah, a Nokia 3310. It cost me 250 Rand. And I charged it once for 100 Rand, and that's all I've needed to phone him, really. Okay. And I maybe, so it costs nothing.
Yes.
I can get a hold of him. So all of this, I need to give my child a phone so that I can call them.
Yes. They need to be able to WhatsApp me, whatever.
Yeah. No.
No, you can call
just
them.
call them.
Sure.
Like, and his real challenge, my older son's challenge, is that, he's in grade 7 and he's the only one who doesn't have a smartphone in his class.
And how do you deal with that? Because I'm sitting with a situation right now at home where my 9-year-old is the only one of her friends that's not on WhatsApp at night.
Correct.
And so she gets to school in the mornings and everyone is talking about whatever they shared on WhatsApp the night before, and she can't join the conversation.
Yeah, look, I really think there has to be a collective response to this. It cannot be individual parents.
Yes.
So in that, what I need to do is influence other parents to not give their children smartphones.
Yes.
Because again, I send my child to learn some stuff in school, but also to develop socially. Yes. And we've got to bring that back.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, the WhatsApp thing, children are messaging each other, getting distracted all the time. Parents are giving their children Ritalin to manage their ADHD, but they're on WhatsApp.
Actually,
none of this makes sense. So, why would, the thing about WhatsApp is it is constant. You're constantly on. You're constantly
always
distracted.
Switched on, always distracted.
Correct.
Always available.
Yeah. And I say this at work, 99% of what you get on WhatsApp is, I don't know if I'm allowed, but it's complete, it's your friend sitting on a toilet sending you crap.
Yes. No, and so unnecessary.
Yeah,
so
it's complete.
Unnecessary.
It's completely, for the 1% relevant information, you distract yourself 100% of the time. Whereas if you just switch off, and then can you imagine putting that in the hands of kids?
Yes.
Why?
No prefrontal cortex. So everything that, little bit, no, I shouldn't say that. Immature prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
And so decisions are very much based on what feels good now in the moment. There's no, we're not thinking of consequences.
Yeah. So if you have a stern conversation with your child and, something important, you're teaching them something important, and they can't concentrate, and you've given them a phone with WhatsApp, whose fault is it?
That's insane. And let's talk a little bit about morals and values. You told me a very interesting story about how your dad used to instill values into you.
Yeah.
I would love for you to share that story.
Yeah. So I talk about the Will Smith slap. Oh,
yes,
sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. You remember that?
Yes.
Incident?
Oh my gosh.
And that reminded me of my dad, and I make a joke, not because he used to beat me like that. It's a separate story. What would have happened when me growing up was that at dinner that evening, my dad would bring up this topic. Let's say it happened, and he would say, "I'm sure you guys have heard."
Yes. Will Smith got angry
and slapped her. And when that came out, there was, I don't know if you remember, there was 2 schools of thought in kind of the public opinion. The one was, oh, look how amazing Will Smith is. He's protecting his wife's honor. And then the second one is, violence is not unacceptable under any circumstance. So those are the 2 kind of general schools of thought. And, what would have happened from when I was growing up is my dad would bring it up. We would have a discussion at dinner. And he would guide us as to our family stance relative to those 2 positions. He would say, in our family, violence is just not acceptable. You stand up for your wife, but you can never act out like this, Yes. And that would be quite a big influence in me. So, in terms of guiding voice, my dad, who cares about me, would give me that guidance. The problem with today's children is by the time they come to dinner, they've heard 1,000, if not 2,000 opinions
of the world.
No, actually, people pre-selected by the algorithm to piss them off in their direction, So whether it's even left or right, or, the algorithm would know the child's tendency to lean on either side of this, and then give them millions of opinions
that agree
around the extreme version of that side. So by the time they come to dinner that night, you're the
There's no
last
room.
voice in the conversation. In fact, they've had the debate, or they've been so influenced
Yes.
by everyone with a thumb in their echo chamber that now children don't engage with you. So
Yeah,
you
there's
can
no
try and
conversation.
now remember, everyone in your echo chamber is not pre-qualified, not qualified. They don't know you. You don't know them. They're not in your friend circle. They're not in your community. They're not your dad who actually has your interests at heart. So you're listening to opinions of people. Oh, sorry, you're being influenced by opinions of people that are unqualified in terms of your
your
space.
Upbringing, your moral compass.
Correct. And now you have kids, screaming at their parents, completely against what their parents are saying. It's only because they're the last voice in the conversation. And we allow this. So again, who is your moral guide? Who is your moral framework? Where are you getting it from? Children need that support.
Yes.
I'm not saying all children will agree exactly with their parents, but they need to be influenced by people who love and care about them.
Yes, absolutely. And that's also, I think influence for me is one of the big topics. A mom asked me the other day, you were in that talk, when the mom asked me, why can my 13-year-old not have social media? And my response was actually that at that pivotal time when you are formulating identity and you are building self-worth, the last thing you need is a global peer group influencing who you are going to become one day.
Yeah, I mean, I really need to understand why people think children must have access to social media. I don't know what it is in, anti-social media.
Yes.
You really, and why should anti-social media have access to your child? Somebody can explain to me.
I love it.
And again, look at the tech giants' children.
They don't.
They're not on social media. Why?
Yeah. So, you know what? I'm going to ask you one last question because our time is running out. I love it. I love it.
Sorry, I get it.
So I want to ask you, what is the one piece of advice you would like to give parents?
No phone, no smartphones until you're 16, and then you can have a dumb phone, which is today's world of a smartphone. Simple as that. It's designed to addict you. Why would you give it to a child?
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much, Ajit, for your time. You've been incredible. You add so much value to the discussion. I think you have the knowledge, the tech knowledge, and then you also have the passion of being a parent, being a father, and knowing and standing up for what is right and good for your children. So I really appreciate your perspective.
No, I really thank you so much, Esti, for the work that you do as well. I think it's really important.
Thank you.
I just hope that we can build a community of practice, right?
Yes.
And that's why I'm here, is essentially trying to get more people to understand what's happening, and then hopefully, start to repair some of this damage in society.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you, Ajit.
Welcome.